Hey guys, this is MSCEIT Vicky. I'm Sathvik, fresh medical student at Bond Uni. In this video, we're going to be talking about the psychometric test that Bond uses to select their medical students. So I'm going to divide kind of this video into 2 or 3 chunks because the psychometric test itself is divided into 2 parts. So it consists of the MSCEIT, which is the emotional intelligence test, and then the personality test. So I'll divide this video into that. So let's just get straight into it. So the MSCEIT is sort of the emotional intelligence. So it's how you sort of perceive and use and kind of understand and regulate your emotions and the emotions of the people around you, so in certain scenarios and situations. So that kind of depends on sort of your ability to read faces, read the room, and respond kind of appropriately to the situation at hand. Obviously very applicable to the medical profession where things are always changing. There's always high emotions in the hospitals and hospital rounds. So, and then that's kind of what the MSCEIT is about. So if we kind of look into what the kinds of questions and the kinds of things that they're looking for, we'll have a look into that now. So we'll start with the identifying emotions part of this sort of section, the MSCEIT. Again, before we move on, actually, I just wanted to say that these questions, I just found them on YouTube. I just Googled the psychometric test and it just popped up on Google. So this isn't actually from the real psychometric test. That's just a disclaimer before we move on with any of these examples that I'm going to show in these videos. I just found them on Google. So as you can see, so in this one we started with the identifying emotions. So you can see a man here smiling, glasses on, perfect. It says indicate the emotions expressed by this face. 1, happiness. So I'll break down what the scale actually means. So it says it goes from 1 to 5, 1 being the least sort of agreeable to whatever the trait that they're showing here. So in this case it's happiness. 5 being the most agreeable to that trait. So in this picture, this man is clearly smiling. Usually when someone's smiling, it kind of emphasizes that they're happy, right? So in this case, what I would select would be 5. And then if we move on to the next one, fear. Obviously when someone's a bit fearful or afraid or scared of something, they don't look like this, they wouldn't be smiling. So obviously this one will be 1. And sadness, again, I don't know anyone who smiles or laughs when they're sad. So that would be 1 as well. So you can kind of get a grasp as to what kind of questions that they'll ask you in this subsection of MSCEIT. It's just they'll give you a bunch of pictures of faces in this case, and they'll say, okay, what's happening in here? Very important when you're trying to read your patients. If they're distressed, you need to be able to recognize it. If they're fearful of whatever conditions they may have, you need to be able to read it so that you can address it and kind of fix that issue. That's why I feel that they use this kind of objective testing method. So now let's move on to the next sort of subsection, which is managing emotion. So it says, Debbie just came back from vacation. She was feeling peaceful and content. How well would each action preserve her mood? So action 1, she started to make a list of things at home that she needed to do. Okay, so the point of the question is, how well would she need to preserve her peacefulness and contentness or happiness? If she started making lists of all the things that she needs to do, she's going to feel in a rush to do those things. Obviously, that's going to remove the peaceful nature that you have, right? It's just going to sit in the back of your head and be like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. When you've just come back from vacation, that's going to ruin your mood. So this is a very ineffective way of preserving her mood. So that would be, I would give that a 1. Moving on to number 2. She began thinking about where and when she would go on her next vacation. This one is a bit more tricky because this one really depends on the kind of person that you are. For some people, they might not want to think about the next vacation for whatever reasons they might have. So for some people, they just want to think about the vacation that they've just had to preserve their mood. So in this kind of sense, it can become a bit more subjective. And that kind of brings me to a point, which is if you don't really do as well as you think you did in your psychometric test and don't receive an interview invite, it doesn't mean that you're like a crazy person, you're not good at reading emotions and things like that. It's just that some of these questions can come off a bit subjective. And at the end of the day, everyone is different. So the people who make these tests are also humans. So there'll be some sort of bias, although they say it's standardized. In my opinion, I would say that they're kind of still a bit more biased to a particular group of people. But coming back to the question, I would say if you're thinking about your next vacation, you're still going to be wanting to be in that peaceful and content mood anyway. So I would rate this somewhere between 4 and 5, because you would still think about what you're going to do and where you want to go, and that would still make you a bit excited, and that would kind of still sort of preserve the mood, in my opinion. So I'd say a 4 and 5 for that. So action 3, she decided it was best to ignore this feeling since it wouldn't last anyway. Let me read that again. Action 3. She decided it was best to ignore the feeling since it wouldn't last anyway. So in this one, she's just going to brush off her peacefulness and contentness and not really think about what she'd just been through. I would say this isn't very effective because she's actively kind of just removing the mood that she's already in. So this would be a very ineffective way. So 1 there. So we'll now move on to the personality test, part of the psychometric assessment. The personality test is kind of different to the MSCEIT that we've been talking about. The MSCEIT focuses on the faces, the colors, the shapes, and the emotions that it kind of creates. But this personality test will kind of focus on your traits and characteristics. So the questions will kind of be sort of like a sentence or two in length, and it will be a statement, not even a question. And you just kind of have to say whether you kind of strongly agree or strongly disagree with the statement. It will be on a 1 to 5 point scale. So 1 to 5 scale. Let's actually have a look at a couple of examples, and then at the end I'll kind of give you a few sort of tips and my advice as to how to go about this whole psychometric assessment. So here we've got 3 questions. I know this one says 1 to 7 scale, but that's what you get when you use Google for some questions. The real one will be 1 to 5, as I said before. So we'll start from the first one. It says, I'm sensitive to the feelings and emotions of others. So before I start breaking down these questions, I just wanted to say, so for the personality test, I really recommend that you just sort of use your own kind of intuition when you're answering these questions. I wouldn't get into a mindset of, oh, what does the university want me to answer? Because there'll be lots of questions in there that will be asking and testing the same sort of traits in different ways, and if you try sort of guess what they want, you'll end up contradicting yourself, and it will be really hard to pull an interview offer from that kind of score that you might get. So my biggest tip would be to just go with your gut and answer the questions. Don't try and guess what the test taker wants you to answer. So I'm sensitive to the feelings and emotions of others. So as myself, answering as me, I would say that I am very sensitive to the feelings and emotions of others. So for this scale, I would put a 7. For the actual test, I would put a 5, because it only goes to 5. So next one, I have a good understanding of the emotions of people around me. So for myself, again, I would say I do have a pretty good sense of understanding of emotions of the people around me, just because I tend to be a bit more attentive than the average person. So for me, that is a strongly agree as well. So that's a 7. Moving on to the third one, I always set goals for myself and then try my best to achieve them. That is 100% in a sentence right there. So that's a 7 for me as well. So if you answer it with your intuition like this, you will answer them really quickly. It doesn't take that long. So now I just want to give you sort of general advice on sort of the entire psychometric test, so that you can have your best foot forward when you're taking your assessment. The general kinds of advice I would give would be, their test takes about an hour and a half or so to complete, and you have about 2 hours. So I would say for the MSCEIT, get familiar with reading people's faces if you're not too good at that. Maybe watch a couple movies and try and understand what kind of sort of emotions that the actor is actually experiencing. Try a few more of the YouTube videos about how to sort of identify when you have. Read more of the more complex faces, because I know there's a few that do come up. And then again, get familiar with the kinds of emotions that different kinds of shapes that can sort of instir within you. So soft edges compared to rough edges, sort of pointy things compared to sort of, yeah, again, soft edges, soft corners, and things like that. Get used to associating colors with different kinds of emotions. Like we're already like biologically, maybe not biologically, but like wired. We're already wired to associate different colors with different emotions from films that we watch. So for example, if you have red, you kind of associate that with anger. You have blue, kind of sadness. You know, different kinds of colors mean different types of things. So get familiar with those. And so I talked about shapes, I talked about the colors, I talked about the faces. So I would say those are the big main 3 things that you need to get yourself familiarized for the MSCEIT. And then for the personality test, make sure that you're in tune with yourself. Make sure you know yourself really well. I know it sounds really weird when I say it out loud, but a lot of people go into the test having that mindset that I spoke about earlier, where they use the test taker's sort of mindset and say, I'm going to pick that because that's what they want. And what they do is that they end up actually going back to their intuition, because their intuition is telling them something else from what they want to answer. So that clash usually appears with a lot of students, and that's how usually most students aren't selected, in my opinion, because they have that conflict. So I would say stick to one thing. If you really want to take the test taker's mindset, have that, take that all the way through, don't drop it. But I would really, really recommend to use your own intuition in doing this. So with that, I'm going to end the video here. So I hope you found that useful. Again, if there's anything else, any lingering questions, do feel free to reach out to me. I know there's a lot of emphasis on you guys wanting this video, so hope that was useful. And I'll see you guys in the next one, which will be Bons et Memoirs.